into 10:30 tonight. Well, obviously with the big game of this weekend, if we can just keep it to the one question on Real Madrid, which obviously Gary will ask. So if we're already in the room, we'll kick off with Gary from Sky.
Mikel, thanks for your time.
Hello.
Just two questions for you today. Do you regret not signing a striker, and have you written off winning the league? Just kidding. The England squad's been announced, and some good news around these parts because MLS has got the nod. Your reaction to that?
Very proud of him. It's a huge moment for him and for the club as well. Again, one of our graduates getting the call for England. It's a massive thing, so very happy.
They've been saying the right things, I think, Thomas Tuchel, about there were concerns about fast-tracking a fast tracker, but they can offer in the right environment. Have you been involved in those discussions before?
No, but I'm sure that will be the case. And Thomas is a top coach. I know a few people around him and the setup in England, and I have no doubt that they will do the right thing with him.
And he's confident. That's not going to be any issue for him mixing in that kind of company, is it?
With Miles? I don't think so. No.
And obviously Ben Wright, not in the squad this time because obviously he's not been playing because of injury, but the mood music is good. There's a kind of mending of the parting of the ways it's healed. He wants to be involved again. Is that good news?
Yeah, well, I heard that there've been some positive conversations around it, so I imagine it will be about timing more than anything else, especially with the amount of time that he's been out with injury.
And no Ethan yet. That's probably just a step too far for him, but potentially in the future, another Arsenal youngster getting involved with England. Do you get a personal pride from that, the role that you've played with Miles and eventually maybe Ethan?
Yeah, I think we all do because obviously we are involved in their development, and we know that it's one of the biggest dreams that you can achieve as a football player, and a really proud moment. So being part of that, obviously, it's a great thing to be.
And a real kind of English core at Arsenal as well now, both in the English side and here at Arsenal. Is that something that is important? Very important.
I think culturally, because of our history and we're an English club, to have that DNA that represents as a club and then having a lot of academy players as well, I think it's something very, very positive, so very proud of it.
But just quickly before we move on from England, Bukayo Saka obviously not in the squad, injured. Any update on when we might see him back training?
No, he's getting closer. He's stepping up and making a very good progress, I would say. So let's see when we start to throw him in with the team how he reacts and how fit he can get quickly.
The supercomputer, I love a supercomputer.
Okay.
They make you third favourites to win the Champions League, behind Barcelona and PSG, but ahead of Real Madrid. So you've got a say whether Real Madrid win the Champions League or not. Talk to us about that draw. Are you pleased with it?
Well, a fascinating draw. I think you're going to play against the club with the biggest and more history in the competition, and very excited to play against them. But before that, we have 3 big matches in the Premier League.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Premier League. The same supercomputer gives you a 0.5% chance of winning the Premier League, a 99.5% chance, I'm not a statistician, of Liverpool winning the Premier League. So you're right, there is still a chance.
Into the next one.
Chelsea, 5-0 this time last year. You'd go for that again, wouldn't you?
Well, I think it's going to be a very different game, and I think the way they develop as a team as well is very impressive. What Enzo has done on the coaching staff, the amount of talent that they have in the squad. So yeah, a really tough match. I think we are our best as well. Big chance for us to win the game.
Raheem obviously was man of the match midweek. Played well, looked like he was enjoying himself. That could be the start of him maybe getting back towards his best for you, but unfortunately, obviously, he can't be involved on Sunday because of the deal with Chelsea. Is that bad for him? Would it have been good for him to carry on that momentum?
I think so, but it's what it is. We knew about that. He played well. He was contributing to the attacking goals that we scored as well. So very good. That's what we needed. Players in good form, in good spirit, good confidence, and certainly that performance is going to help him.
Okay.
Sylvia from Premier League.
Hi.
Your players have spoken about how effective you've been getting the team into the right state of mind mentally. How has it been for you, though, mentally as a coach, to go through the seasons develop the project, keep the boys resilient, hungry for more, and the different challenges you face. We're nearly at the end of another season. It's gone quick.
Yeah, day by day. I mean, try to surround yourself with the right people that have the right expertise and can advise you to make the right decision. And after that, unpredictability is a big factor in this industry, and you have to adapt to it. You can have an understanding or a way of doing things, and from there, for sure, things will happen, and you're going to have to adapt, but go into the next day.
And Ben Wright, he returned to start 122 days after his injury, and 1 year ago today, he signed his new long-term contract. How do you think in this closing stage of the season he can really help the squad, even just being around them more in training?
Very much, and he's been now involved for the last 2 weeks almost, and he's not reacting, so that's very positive. And we know Ben is a really important player for us. He brings something very different to the team dynamic, and I'm thrilled to have him.
Your players have also spoken about how meticulous and knowledgeable you are when you do your analysis against opponent. It's very, very detailed apparently. Very similar to Enzo Maresca, who likes to be very analytical. Chelsea next, big London derby at home. What sort of matchup do you expect? Like you said, it will be different to the 5-0. There's been a lot of change in their squad, injuries both sides.
Well, let's see. I think two teams that want to be very dominant in the way of playing, very aggressive on the high press and the way we have to have the ball. A lot of individual quality on that pitch. So it's about imposing what you want and the direction that you want to take the game and keep them very far from their strengths. I think that's going to be a key thing as well.
Thanks, Chris Simon from the Standard.
Mikel, you touched a bit there on having a sort of British draw. I think you were here in 2012 when there was that famous photo. I think it might have even been here when Arsenal was there with Aaron, with Alex.
All the new signings.
Yeah, when all five of them together. I just wonder what your sort of memories of that and why that importance of having that British draw is in the club.
I think that's great. I think it attaches people to the football club. It makes them pride. I think everybody wants to see academy players, English player, driving and being the face of the football club. I think is really important, and I think it has to happen organically. You cannot force it, but especially with those two. Now it's really good news because they deserve to be where they are. They are doing great, and it's a bright future ahead of them.
I'm focused about Chelsea and about Arsenal, and not about Mikel.
Okay, but you've mentioned it yourself prior to this. You've talked about Arsenal and the fact that they've had the manager for a long, long time. So you've spoken about it before. What's your take on the fact that they've stuck with him for so long? Is it a good sign for managers as a whole that clubs can be this patient?
It's question for Arsenal board.
Okay, but you have spoken about it before, though. That's why I've asked.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just said that Arsenal, they have the same manager last 5 years. Then if it's correct or not, it's no question for me.
So is it still a team that Chelsea would aspire to be like, that you would like Arsenal to, Chelsea to be more like, to follow that model? You've said that before.
No, Chelsea is going to follow the model that they want to follow. They don't need to copy Arsenal.
Okay.
James?
Enzo, how big do you think the gap is between Chelsea and Arsenal right now?
It's quite big. The reason why is because they are working with the same manager 5 years. So the difference is quite important. With same players, they already played for some important game. But our target, our duty is to close that gap between us and them. In this moment, the table just said that the difference between us and them is, I think, 6 points, if I'm not wrong. So we are quite close, but we have still 9 games to go.
You've got a good chance of winning a competition this year in Europe, but if you did qualify for the Champions League next season by the league, would that feel like a trophy in itself?
In this moment, we have 2 targets. That is finish top 4 or top 5 for Champions League, and the other one is the conference. This club, this club used to play final and fight for titles. So if we are able to give to the fans and to the club again this chance to fight for title, I think it's important for us.
Ben?
Has the 5-0 from last season, even though it was before your time, been watched in detail and used as a motivating factor?
No, we played the first leg at home here. I think was 1-1. We played a very good game, and I didn't use for any motivation last year game.
Can I just ask you as well about goalkeepers? You had said Philip Jorgensen, the Premier League goalkeeper, played tonight. Is Rob Sanchez likely to play in that game?
Yeah, will be Robert playing against Arsenal.
Do you expect any changes of goalkeeper now in the Premier League between now and the end of
But
the season?
since we started, the idea was not to change keeper, but sometimes you have to modify, you have to be flexible with your idea. We do this in the game plan, we do this, the way we want to attack, the way we want to defend, but also we need to be flexible on players. I think Robert needs some days off, or at least rest with this head, with mentally. And now he's back. Hopefully we are not going to change until the end. Also because I said many times we are quite happy with both keepers.
Neil, yeah, so you said it there. You're only 6 points behind Arsenal. Could be 3 on Sunday. Are they catchable in second place?
Yeah, and they can be 9. At the moment they are 6. We are not focused in if they can be 3 or 9 or 6. We are just focused how we can do our game, how we can try to beat them, and then hopefully we can do that and we can be more close.
But the run you're on, it could be a target. Second place could be a target for you now.
Yeah, it could be a target for sure. It's our duty to do our best, but in the same time, I think the target for us is Sunday game, and then game after game to see how we can go close.
Rob?
You told us a lot that your preferred style is you want your team to control the ball, control the play. Is it realistic that you can go away to Arsenal, play them at the Emirates, control the game, control the ball?
If can be realistic,
Do you think it's realistic for your team to go away to Arsenal?
but the intention will be that. Then if we are able or not depends a lot from the opponent. They just said to me that Pedro Neto tonight did the sprint, the quick sprint and the long sprint, 90 minutes. I don't know if you remember the sprint that he did at the end. But the reason why was because we were sitting back, we were at the edge of our box. So if we plan the game sitting back and wait, for sure our strikers, wingers, they are going to do 20 sprint for 70 meters. But when you play most of your game in the opposite side, there is no space to do that kind of sprint. So Arsenal, our plan is to control the game, but also it's a team that they're going to try to press high and they're going to try to be aggressive, and probably we have more space to attack in behind.
I think we're going to start this one by talking about the managers, the men in charge of leading these two teams. And where are we at with Mikel Arteta, 5 years at Arsenal now, Enzo Maresca, his project only really just starting. What are your thoughts and your take on where they are now and kind of where we go from here?
Well, the fan base is split in two over Mikel Arteta. Half the fan base think he's doing a good job and that everybody should trust that process. The other half are unhappy that last season, for the last 2 transfer windows, he hasn't bought a striker when it's been staring him in the face and screamingly obvious. And I think they would have a point, but then the other side would have a point as well, because there has been progress. There's no doubt about the fact that this season and the underperformance this season means there's a lot of pressure going on him into next season. I think they should keep him. He's done a fantastic job, changed the culture, brought in good players, and given Arsenal fans a reason to be proud of the club again.
Yeah, I agree that he should remain the Arsenal manager. I mean, I think there has been a little bit of a blind spot with the number 9. This has been a problem for 3 years. This is not something that's appeared overnight. It's not been a 6-month issue. I feel as though that should have been addressed in one of the last 4 or 5 transfer windows, to be honest. No doubt has he picked the club up and, like you say, installed a culture and an environment positive, and is taking it to a new level. I just wonder, when you've been waiting for City to fall off their standards for so long, and the moment they do, which is this season, I mean, I don't think anyone's seen their fall off coming. His team weren't capable to take advantage of that. So I can understand the frustration. I think there's 1 year left, but he's got to sign a number 9.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Listen, at the start of the season, I remember being on this show actually and asking or debating whether you'd rather have Arsenal's defence, which was one of the best in the Premier League last season, and they added as well, I think quite well, Calafiori came in, which gave them more depth. And it generally is defences that win titles. Because you can win games 1-0. You don't have to be that spectacular. But
which
if you've
was the
got
Arsenal way.
Absolutely, which was the Arsenal way. And they've kind of stuck to that. But up front, they just haven't had that ability to be able to finish teams off. And that's what's put pressure on him. But I just hope that the fan base a little bit, as you've been saying, the bit less short-sighted and they can see the bigger picture of what has changed.
So obviously they didn't go and get that number 9. Then they also had a spate of attacking injuries, which is why we're seeing things like Kieran Tierney, part of the front three, in midweek against PSV. The experiment, shall we call it, with Kai Havertz, do you think there is like a stubbornness in Mikel Arteta that says that works, I've used him, I'm going to prove it works, and that's why he hasn't gone out and bought a number 9?
See, for me, this isn't. It wasn't an experiment. This was all part of the plan. When I look back to the summer transfer window, when Raheem Sterling became available, they moved heaven and earth, and they got that done within 48 hours because he wanted that player. So everyone from the outside of Arsenal said they've needed a 9. Mikel Arteta obviously feels that they didn't. That's his choice as the manager. He could have brought a number 9 in, even if he wasn't at the level he would have liked him to be.
Yeah.
You could have still got someone to fill that void and kind of like, I don't feel that he has to be a world-class 9 because I feel as though with all the world-class players around him, you could still make a 9 look good in that team, in that philosophy.
Glenn, you've been a striker. Can I ask you, if you're in the box, do you feel Arsenal need a penalty box striker, or do you think they need an Isak-type striker who can make his own luck?
I would refer to Isak as both. I think he can do both. So I think that's probably a bad example, sorry. But I think they need a 9 that is going to occupy, that's going to be in and around there, that's going to score goals, that's going to be that kind of anticipation of where that ball's going to drop. And I think with all the quality around you, when you look at Odegaard and Trossard and Saka when he's fit, that also creates space for them. So just a number 9. I don't want a 9 that's, because obviously they've got Jesus at the club that's referred to as a number 9, but he drifts and he wants to get involved in play.
That's my question.
Stay there. You occupy your 2 centre backs. That'll create space for others. If they get attracted to the ball, that'll create space for you. So it's a knock-on effect, and it's beneficial for everyone around.
It's interesting. I think that's part of the frustration for Arsenal fans, because other clubs have managed to find, especially during the January transfer window, attacking players who've made a big difference. The biggest example is probably Asensio at Aston Villa. You know, they managed to bring in a Marcus Rashford who's got renewed energy, and they've seen a change. And so I think part of that frustration with Arteta and not signing the 9 is, well, does he need the perfect one? Does he need the world-class one? Or, as you said, he just needed somebody in there in that position who was capable, because he has world class all around him.
Yeah, I tend to feel as though if you bring an elite 9 in, not world class, not an Isak, but if you bring an elite striker in of a 9 that knows the position well enough, he will look even better with those surroundings, because your caliber's going to be better with the heightened quality around you, without any doubt, and just. But this has been a problem for 5 transfer windows. This is not something new. So this is Mikel Arteta, the sporting director. This is Arsenal's choice to be in this situation, as far as I'm concerned. So that leads me to think: has this process ended?
And has the cycle come to an end? I think there's at least one more season in it. I still do think that there is more to come, because, as you say, if the striker does come in that they need, and I do agree, I think it should be a penalty box striker rather than somebody who drifts outside, because you've got so much creativity around the box, then Arsenal could easily be up there and scoring goals and winning those games that they've drawn or lost this season. And I think certainly the perception of Arteta then starts to ease. I mean, they've got such a massive fan base at Arsenal, and they're going to, ironically, they're going into this weekend, I call it the Toothless Tiger Derby, because Chelsea have got no strikers either. You know, they've both spent so much money. I was going to call it the Underachievers Derby, but I'm going to stick with the Toothless Tiger Derby.
Both harsh.
Well, it is. What have they won? What have they done?
It's just a bit harsh. I mean, the Manchester United, Tottenham, that would be an underachieving derby.
Chelsea spent £1 billion, they've got no strikers, and they're struggling to get into the top 4.
They have got a striker who's very effective, actually, in Nicholas Jackson.
He's not there.
He's not fit, but when he plays, he's very effective. And him being out, I'm sure we'll get onto it, but he's really impacted Cole Palmer's form as well.
And that's a big part of why that they're both so toothless, because without him, and obviously Cole Palmer now 10 games, no goals. It's difficult for Chelsea, and plus defence isn't exactly watertight either. So if you're not scoring goals and you're not keeping clean sheets, how do you think you're going to play Champions League football next season?
Yeah.
I think of the two managers, Maresca's under most pressure, because if he doesn't finish in the Champions League places when there are 5 up for grabs potentially, then maybe you need to get a manager who can.
I think the worry for Maresca is that they started off so well, and it's, I suppose he's changing their style slightly, and for me he's becoming more of a possession based. And when I get a look and I zoom out at that Chelsea squad, they're a very youthful team. So why not lean into that youthful exuberance and play with energy and play fast, which is effectively what those bodies are capable of. Yet he's trying to go the other way and trying to control games, very much Pep Guardiola style of the past, I suppose.
You know, there was a moment in December when they were within a few points of Liverpool at the top, and I think that was a turning point of their season because.
But my worry was, right, but was that Pochettino's good work, or was that all Maresca?
Yeah, agree. I mean, listen, I think Pochettino left the club in fantastic shape in terms of their home record, their away record, the confidence in the team. The respectability he gave them, again, not just from the inside, but from the outside as well. Suddenly opposition teams and players were looking at Chelsea saying, that's a difficult place to go. And Maresca's kind of weakened that a lot with some of the decisions which looked good in the first half of the season. But by midway through, and this is why I'm talking about the proximity to Liverpool, because at that moment, what he should have been saying was, yeah, I'm going to lean into the fact that we are in a title race. But he suddenly started doing that, no, we're not good enough, no, we're not ready. And I feel psychologically that transmitted itself to the players. I always say in football, not just in football, in sport, the attitude reflects the leadership. And if the leadership is bombastic and full of belief and exudes that confidence, then the players will believe. And they've got something to hold on to as well. And I just didn't see that at Chelsea this season.
Bombastic, what a great word. We've also learned that this is the
Here all
toothless,
week. It's the end of the week.
The toothless tiger derby
For Arsenal. If you were going to sum up the difficulty level, though, what would you say?
Well, you're kind of getting close to impossible, Kels. I'm not joking. It's tough now. I thought it was a game that you probably needed to win just so as then you can win the next game. Because remember, Arsenal have got to win all of the games. So to win the next game, and I thought that they needed something out of that yesterday, but I thought when you looked at the way we were trying to create, it just kept continually falling short at the critical point, the final ball, the pass through, everything. It just looks to me like a team. As the fact that the strikers, people keep saying about the strikers, but the forwards that have been needed for the whole of this season, you probably needed them in a game like that yesterday. And it was a shame you didn't see someone like Raheem Sterling come off the bench. They put on Kieran Tierney instead, which says a lot about what he thinks of that situation. So it really felt a bit like of a resignation yesterday. You're seeing something that, I hope this team now, they have to find something to keep going. Watch behind your back now, because it looks like it's Liverpool's. So you just have to keep going and finish the season really well now, I think.
That was what was interesting about the game, is that Man United really galvanised themselves for this match. But for Arsenal, what do you put down the fact that that it wasn't working for them in the final third?
I actually thought they played really well first half. If they took one or two of those chances, I think they would have won the game quite comfortably. But then one long ball from Onana at the end of it, Mazraoui wins a flick, Garnacho gets a free kick and Bruno scores. Up to that point, I don't think United barely had the ball and barely had a shot on target.
I don't think they did.
And I think Arsenal had loads of time to kind of figure that out and get back into the game. But I do think they were probably shocked by that goal because they were so dominant, Arsenal. And I'm with Wrighty. They played nice up into the box, but if you think you're going to go to Old Trafford with Neri's an amazing player, but he's only 17. That's the first bad game I've seen him out. And Marino as a number 9. I think that in a way, they've overachieved being second with that, playing like that without a striker. The injuries are remarkable. So I think Mikel's done a brilliant job. But again, to go to Old Trafford in March, when you need to win a game to win the trophy, you need more than one striker. They don't even have a striker. Kai Havertz is a striker, and he's injured. Saka's injured. They need at least 2 more bodies, I think, to compete. They needed that
before the injuries came.
They need 2 more bodies to compete with the top. I think they've done amazing to even be second with, lacking a number 9.
Yeah, but it looks as though that game at Old Trafford might be the one that sort of tipped people from saying, well, it's probably going to end up in Liverpool hands to this is looking pretty much, as Wright said, nearly impossible for Arsenal. This is looking pretty much, as Wright said, nearly impossible for Arsenal.
Yeah, I think so. And the injury issues, I just don't... The fact that they're still a problem, I don't see the situation changing. If you could say there are a lot of players coming back quite quickly, the fact is for Havertz and Gabriel Jesus, those are long-term absences. And Saka, I think obviously he's going to be back a little bit sooner than the rest, but they won't want to rush him because that is the type of injury that can become a long-term problem for a player, and they need him so much. And obviously it's probably good for a lot of international players with no Euros this summer, because I think a lot of England players are kind of suffering as a result of that. But I don't see a way in a corner can be turned for Arsenal because there's not a transfer window now for this rest of the season, and they don't have these players coming back where you think that will change everything. This is the squad they've got to work with, and that's the best they can get. And I agree with Owen as well. I think in the situation they're in, without having a striker, I think they're still playing well, but there's no focal point, there's no penetration whatsoever. It's all kind of movement outside the box. The person doing the most running and getting to good positions is Declan Rice. He is the one who is getting run into the box, is trying to get into good areas, trying to make things happen. And I think that's a lot of pressure on him. He's already kind of taking on a big load and a big responsibility. But I think without him, I don't see ways they can be dangerous.
But we keep coming back to this point about injuries for Arsenal across the course of this season. When you look at the list of players who are injured, and when you look at the reasons for their injuries, is there an argument that they could have managed this a little bit better? One of the reasons that Arne Slot was brought into Liverpool was his ability to keep players fit. If it's hamstring injuries, if it's are they the kind of injuries that come because of can you look at them?
They're working too hard in training?
What I'm wondering, well, we don't know if they're working too hard in training, but are they the kind of questions that Arsenal will be asking come the end of the season? Are there ways that we could have kept those players fit for more of the season?
They're going to have to, Kels, because we had a season last season, because now all of a sudden I think what we're going to do, we're going to blame the sports science department, when last season we hardly had any injuries. And we saw the season before we did.
Even if you go to the season before, it was Saliba at the end, which was a back injury, and it was... I just wonder if there was something
but then the question is, Kels, was it luck? Because obviously you're losing Saliba, so was it luck last season, or was it the sports science? Because it's something that they're going to have to look at, because when you look at some of those injuries, there's 3 of those injuries are hamstring injuries, which is, obviously says, which is a lot of work as to why your hamstring in the end goes. And we've seen with Saka's, I think it came away. It's a massive injury that he's had to have surgery on. And that is always a worry to hear when you're having surgery on a hamstring, because normally it's a pull. But yeah, those things will have to be looked at.
Going off to warm weather training and getting injured on warm weather. In Dubai they went to, wasn't it, for their warm weather training? Well, does that set any alarm bells ringing for you, do you think?
With that one, I'm not... I don't know what to say.
I just mean in the
the thing is because you're going out there, and it could have been innocuous the way it happened, with the hamstring, you know what I mean, winding down, whatever it is. I don't know how it came about, but then if it's something that could have been avoided, Kels, I'm sure that they're not going to have someone like Kai Havertz on the break doing sprints. So it would have been something that's happened maybe in the game. I don't know what the scenario was, but again, because it's a hamstring injury, because of the amount of games that Hazard has had to play, the work that, remember, these players have to do for Mikel and getting back as well, because even with Jesus injured himself on the edge of our area when he got injured, when he done his hamstring. So there's a lot of work that's going into it. So those things probably have to be looked at. Of course they do. Because in the end, you have to point to, the injuries have cost us to a certain extent, but can we avoid those? And we have to find a way too. And
they have been particularly prevalent in terms of attacking players for Arsenal. That's where they've really missed that. And the question is constantly asked, do Arsenal need another striker? And they were asked actually before the injuries as well. Mikel Arteta is absolutely sick of that question at the moment. But is it a valid one to ask?
Well, I don't even think it's just a striker. Of course they need a striker. If anything, they probably need 2. But if you look at, they let Eddie Nketiah go, maybe rightly so because he wasn't getting game time. But again, to give Kai the opportunity to get a rest, give Saka a rest. These guys played too much. I think Arsenal were lucky these guys didn't break down last year. They were so stable in the fact that and maybe that's why they didn't recruit players. They thought these boys would be fit, but actually it's not a surprise that they've broken down, because you can't keep playing 60 games at high intensity with the demands, mentally, physically, emotionally. I think it's a lot to ask of anyone. So if you had Smith Rowe, if you had Reece Nelson, if you had Nketiah, Balogun, if you would have had someone, you could have played them for 15 games each and give Saka and Havertz and Ødegaard a little bit of a rest. So I do think that they're short in terms of numbers, but I do think they need a couple strikers, not just one.
The summer, I think, Flo
They're
is
going to
massive.
spend big, aren't they?
They have to. I think it's go big or go home, honestly. And obviously they're going to have a new sporting director coming in.
Andrea
And there'll be a
Berta,
lot of expectation and pressure on them. But I think they have to go huge because I think, unfortunately, we're in an era now where people have had to try and keep up with Manchester City and the obviously kind of legacy of those wins and the squad that they built and what they invested. And then you're now maybe at the beginning of what Arne Slot could do with Liverpool, and they're going to tool up again in the summer.
Yep.
So how are you going to match that? Because being second best and chasing and not being good enough, there's nothing to show for that. And a lot of people obviously understandably give Arsenal credit for pushing City as far as they have in recent seasons. But they have to try and keep up and deliver more, because I just don't think it's enough to say on its own that that is an achievement. And they have to go big. And I think the physical demands of the game now are just so different than they even were in, Fergie's dominance time, in terms of, I know Scouted, who, do loads of work on kind of young players and write about them, they did a graph about how the individual sprints that players are having to make and the physical demands on their body have changed so much even in the last 10 years. So you're having to really recruit athletes first and then technically gifted footballers second. And I think, unfortunately, when you're competing with the likes of Manchester City and Liverpool, who've probably been a bit lucky with how few injuries they've had, I think it's really tough.
Or have managed their season well. If you've got a manager who's come to Liverpool in a second, but from what we read, this was one of the attributes that came into the mix in terms of appointing Arne Slot.
They've
Liverpool
got
was an
more
ability
options
to manage players over the season. And when you start to get injuries, then you've got a narrow pool of players to choose from, and the problem.
But they have two players for every position. Liverpool.
Yeah.
With goalkeeper, full-backs, centre-backs, centre-mid. They got 10 strikers.
And Arne Slot's playing style is a little less intense as maybe like Klopp, and maybe that might have
in a
helped as well.
post-Euro season, that's maybe a more sensible way to go.
Maybe it is. Yeah.
Right, just in terms of the demands on the players' bodies. But I just wonder, with the new sporting director coming in, how much of a difference you think that will make across this summer, and how, because there was a point made in the coverage yesterday of the game, and I can't remember who made the point, but that it feels that in the transfer market at times Arsenal have been playing catch up. It's everybody else because they need to sort out the defence. Then the defenders came in. Then everybody's been saying for ages they need a striker, and they haven't quite got there yet. But now that seems like it's a priority.
Maybe Andrea Berta, who I'm quite pleased is coming now, and he can really have a look at everything what's there, set up and what's going on. I think it's great that they haven't brought Ato, I think his name's Ato, Jason Ato, up from who was helping Edu, because I think that probably Mikel needs another voice as well, a voice of experience. With Berta, he's been very Atletico Madrid, 12 years, 2 La Ligas, he's chased down Real Madrid, he's chasing down Barcelona, 2 La Ligas and 2 Champions League finals he's been to, so he's got the experience. You're just going to hope that he's got the network to find the kind of players that, when you look at Arsenal's players now, where we're getting down to this end of the season and it feels like we need a bit more, you need that player who's ready to go to that step, and hopefully he'll have enough time so that by the time the summer comes, he can locate those players and get those players in as early as possible. Because I think that Arsenal, at the start, in the summer, people will be looking, and they're going to need to start well again. They're going to need to make the kind of signings, like everybody, like you say, rightly so, they're going to tool up. Arsenal have to get into that party so as they can be ready to go.
Yeah, I think they're a very well-run football club, and I think, unfortunately, when you're chasing down a Premier League title, perhaps you need to take a few more risks, and I think Arsenal have taken risks with some of their recruitment. For example, Fabio Vieira, probably a player that a lot of people would agree haven't worked out. I mean, there's been handfuls of those, but they haven't spent huge amounts of cash on players that you never see kind of make much of an impact. Whereas for a club like Manchester City, they do that, and they take more risks. And perhaps, the really shrewd and successful way that Arsenal have been run over the last decade, maybe it's
too
time
safe.
I think it's a little bit of that. I think, a lot of the recruitment they've done, I think defensively is really, really strong. I think perhaps Kai Havertz has overachieved on the expectations. I think a lot of Chelsea fans would have said they maybe wouldn't have expected him to hit the numbers that he has done for Arsenal. But I think probably they have tried to do things the right way because they, are being more financially conscious, and that's no bad thing. But obviously, with fans, they want to see success on the pitch, and I do think,
especially when you get that close.
I do think Arsenal as well. A lot has to be asked about their performances in cup competitions too, because yes, they've got.
We
that
can't
huge
say that off the
advantage.
back of a 7-1 win.
Well, they've got the huge advantage in the Champions League, but no FA Cup final appearance since obviously Arteta won his first trophy. Keep getting knocked out in the early rounds. And League Cup as well, they had a huge opportunity with that Newcastle tie. So I think that's the disappointment as well. If you're going to push someone to, the final days in the Premier League, it would, I think, get more credit in the bag if they had other cups.
Might have a chance to come back to that, because I think it's an interesting one on getting that mentality, and it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on that, Owen. But as we mentioned earlier, Mikel Arteta is getting very frustrated with being asked about the transfer window.
Excuse the players a little bit at least when you look at the concentration of injuries you've got in that forward line. Obviously Martinelli comes on, but no Saka, no Havertz, no Jesus.
I mean, I will defend my players all the time because the will to do what they want is no question about that. But in those moments, we have to be better as a team. That's it.
And do you regret not signing a striker in January? Perhaps that extra player? No, it's not about that?
No, it's not about that.
Okay, Mikel, one more. I have to ask you about the title race because it's 15 points now. Is it too much? Right.
Right, they're the two questions he doesn't want then. But they are the two questions that he's going to be asked. So the first two questions that we started off, the first 2 points that we started off talking about, is the title race done now? And is, the Arsenal's inability or not signing a striker in previous transfer windows going to cost them this season? They're valid questions.
They're valid questions. They've been asked.
And actually very politely asked.
Yeah, very politely asked. But but like at the same time, ask at a time where he knows it's going to, after the game, emotions are still high. Asked at a time where he knows that he's going to get some form of reaction. He's been asked that for how long now?
But that's
until they sign a striker.
Until they sign a striker.
But they know they will keep being asked it.
Yeah.
They know it's coming.
I think he's done brilliantly.
But he's probably annoyed. He knew the title race was over.
Oh, 100%.
In that interview there.
Yeah.
And he was probably cooking inside because he knew if the club probably would have backed him and he would have had a striker, he probably could have gone to Old Trafford and won by 3 or 4. That is, I've been there when you're after the game, you think people ask you the worst questions and you literally just so annoyed you want to.
You know what as well?
Sometimes you're better off just walking away.
Oh, 100%.
It's not even like the worst question. It's just the fact. It's the timing.
It's the timing.
I don't think they are the worst.
They're not bad questions at all.
And they're also. And also the timing is when you get access to
Yeah.
which is
it's always going to be.
But does he sign the strikers? Probably not.
Well,
the club should have, shouldn't they?
But you can say it's.
But again, if he does that, then he's critical of his employer, isn't he?
Yeah.
So it's like quite. I can understand. It doesn't look great. I agree with Flo, but he's in a tricky spot because he needs to look after his players. His best ones are injured, and he doesn't want to throw the club under the bus. Everybody knows they need a striker. Anybody in the world knows it. They don't need one, they need two.
Honestly, he's like pinching him with it. He's like, the thing is, it's like, you see with, like Arne Slot, you know what I mean? I don't know what he said to the referee, but he's suspended in that. I think that what happens with Mikel is that Mikel does things and people just take it so far.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know what Arne Slot would have said to it.
If another manager had done that, we wouldn't be highlighting it. Is that what you're saying?
It's not a case of not highlighting it, but like you're going to highlight it because when someone walks out of an interview, everybody's like, ooh, what? But the fact is, it's a question at a time. It's just, for me, he didn't need... Why did he stop him to say, one more?
He would have done more damage if he said an answer.
Because he had to get his thoughts on the title race.
That's his job to ask tough questions, isn't it?
Yeah. We all know it is the simplest question, but it's the question that always is going to be answered. And all you need to do is give the easy, simple line that gives someone something. And that's the game. I would have said, obviously...
Now, sitting here, it's easy,
obviously
isn't it?
it's disappointing, but we're going to have to reassess and go again.
You know, look at... You see, I'll tell you what I like. Maybe he should have taken a leaf out of Arne Slot's book because Arne Slot always looks calm and collected.
But he's winning.
But he said something that's got him suspended.
And you are tested your most if you are a manager who wants to win, and the top managers always want to win, and they're sore losers, right? So that is when you are tested the most, when you have to come and answer these mundane media questions, which are irritating, and it's how you respond there in those moments that people will judge you. If they had won that game, no one would have been talking about his answers probably at all.
In hindsight, I reckon he wishes he had a better poker face, but he realised he just threw the title race away.
And I think, unfortunately, he, at the same time, had shown that again sometimes in interviews where he does look a little bit rattled. And, I think it's hard when you feel like on the cards you've been dealt with your squad, I would be frustrated with the situation. But you have to just...
Yeah, but they pick
Play the game.
People pick on Mikel as well. They do. I remember you look at him against Man City. Against Man City, he was doing his stuff on the sidelines. Pep kicked a chair. No one said a word.
I don't even know what anybody said about Mikel Arteta.
So then, but the thing is that when you look at Mikel's persona when you listen to fan bases, listen to managers, listen to pundits, some pundits, they don't like Mikel for some reason. They don't like him.
I quite like him.
Obviously, I love him.
I think
don't like him.
When it comes to Guardiola, I think Guardiola's had the same sort of reactions in post-match interviews too. All of these managers, even Klopp, Klopp was one of the most well-loved Liverpool managers and Premier League managers of all time. But even he still lost his head sometimes in interviews. It's expected, but people remember it when you lose your head. They don't remember it when you just dismiss a question. That's the challenge.
I wonder as well if it goes back a little bit to what you were saying earlier, Flo, in that it's not about this game. It's not even necessarily just about this season. It's about the fact that there hasn't been a trophy since his first partial season in charge. There hasn't even been a final in that time. And even in the times where they were running Manchester City close, it didn't go down to the final day. It kind of limped a little bit to the end. And now, in the season where Manchester City are off their game, Arsenal haven't been able to challenge the leaders at the top of the division, that they're 15 points clear. I wonder if it's accumulation of those seasons, and that goes back to that sort of winning mentality that you were saying. You can understand why a manager would prioritise the Premier League and the Champions League over the FA Cup and League Cup. But there is something to be said, and Jose Mourinho used to say it all the time, in winning a trophy.
I think Mikel's done his job. From where he took over that football club to where they are now is almost unrecognisable. And we did the game yesterday, right, and there was a graphic in terms of 200 games. Yesterday was the 200th game. And he's up there with there's 5 managers ahead
Ferguson,
of him. Pep. It's a Hall of Fame list, and he's 6th.
But can he get them over the line?
No, but the point is, his body work right now suggests when he finishes, he'll be a Hall of Fame manager in the Premier League. That's a fact, based on the numbers that we saw 200 games in.
But
I don't think
not based on trophies.
No, exactly. But you can't go to Old Trafford with Marino and Nwaneri as a 17-year-old who's brilliant, by the way, and expect to go win the Premier League. It's ridiculous. The club need to back him and get a couple of strikers. I think he's done his job amazingly. But at some point, you need... Back in the day, they had Thierry, Bergkamp, Perez, Overmars, Wiltord, Wright, go on forever here, Ljungberg. And now they're rolling up with Kai Havertz, who's his 10. I think they've overachieved. I really do. I think they're right there. Go spend the money. You wouldn't want to look back with regret and say, we could have.
We could have, yeah. That's the problem.
Go spend some money and go win the Premier League and the Champions League. You're right there. What are you waiting for?
It's going to have to be next season.